musically really miraculous. It's wonderful what has been achieved.
And honestly, the fact that this hall is bearing your name, the commemoration of it, is
Well,
it important? Honestly.
It was a complete surprise to me, really.
But does it have any significance, knowing that this place bearing your name will stand for generations to come?
Let's not talk about that. It was a gesture on the part of the mayor of Florence also, who is very involved. But in Italy, the mayors of cities are presidents of the theaters, which helps also. But he wanted to show me how in that one street Israelis and Palestinians lived in complete harmony together. And that didn't inspire me because I already believe that that's completely possible. And he wanted to show me, and there was no newspaper or no publicity involved in that at all. He just wanted to show me, look what is possible in a small street in Jaffa, it could be in the whole country. And I hope his dream and his wishes come true one day. Really, I hope. I know people are sincere, people on both sides want to have some positive outlook. I know that.
I'm asking because, you know, this world, not this region, is going through some historic and dramatic and somber days these days. Does experience of life and having seen such events in the past help one to cope more optimistically?
I hope we musicians bring some sort of a change, of some sort of positive thinking on both sides. You know, a few years ago, I took my other orchestra from Munich, from the opera, to Kashmir, to my country, because it was my hope one day to have Hindus and Muslims sit together and listen to music. And through a lot of opposition in Kashmir itself, we succeeded in doing one concert in Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir, with 2,000 people who came free of charge, and the German embassy helped, etc. And some rich Indian friends of mine helped also. But for the first time, I looked out into a public where Hindus and Muslims sat together, and we played for them Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. And you cannot imagine the opposition of certain people in Kashmir, where they made them close all the shops on that day in objection to this concert. But we did the concert. But it didn't really help in the end, because there were massacres in 2 weeks amongst them. The whole political thing was started in the wrong phase in Kashmir, and they are still suffering from it. Since 1947, it's almost the same year as your country, almost the same.
So, don't you feel sometimes, don't you get the feeling of being naive in believing such a belief?
No, with our Tismoret, we have been to Akko in the north, and we have played for Arab and Jewish audiences that have sat together.
I remember that event, I was the MC there, and I remember you backstage,
Yes.
if I may say so,
Yes.
very furious for a time because you felt there were not enough Arab listeners in the crowd. And you talked about cancelling the whole thing because not enough Arabs in the crowd. You remember that?
No, not really. No. But there were Arabs.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. There were Israeli Arabs, I suppose.
Yes, of course. It was a wonderful event, eventually.
I have this foundation in the north, in Shahram and in Nazareth, where sometimes they give concerts with these young Israeli Arab kids playing little pieces of Bach and Vivaldi, and just to see the faces of their parents with such pride that their 9 and 10-year-old children are playing Western classical music. This gives us great joy to us, and a lot of our members, including Saida, is involved also to go to teach there. And we supervise the standard of teaching in Shahram, etc. Hopefully this will develop. I don't know how the Weizmann Institute developed. I don't know the whole history of that, but that probably started also in a very small way. And look at today. I'm very proud to be here, and I'm very proud that this organization is going forward. And many children, like the ones you saw, will be cured. And I spoke to the doctors when I took this little girl. There's a organization between Munich and Israel also, because I believe there are surgeons in Israel who specialize in operating tiny babies' hearts. And Arab children and Israeli children are treated there, and it's just wonderful how in this country we have the knowledge that we can help people like that. I wish somebody would tell me a little more about this organization.
אז מאשימים אותי בזה שאני מסית כל הזמן בהסתה, אני מודה באשמה, אני מסית לפיוס.
What Yuval said was that he's continuously being accused of being an inciter because he incites people for peace.
No, he inspires.
He used the word incite, not me.
טוב, נעמה דיברה, זה באמת התחיל מבקשה של חבר פלסטיני, חבר פורום משפחות שכולות, משם זה התפתח וגדל.
It all began with the request of a member of the Forum of Bereaved Families, a Palestinian friend, and from there the organization grew continuously.
בעקבות תרומה מלאונרד כהן, שדחף אותי לפתוח את העמותה, זה מה שאפשר לנו, לעמותה, להגדיל באופן דרמטי את היקף ההסעות.
Thanks to a donation made by Leonard Cohen, the organization was able to grow and the scope of transportation expanded.
ולשמחתי הצטרפו לעמותה הרבה מאוד מתנדבים שחלקם פה. היום אנחנו על הנייר 1,500 מתנדבים, בפועל בסביבות ה-900,000, משהו כזה. ולשמחתי יש הרבה מאוד עזרה ותמיכה כמו התמיכה שלך.
The number of volunteers is on paper 1,500, in essence in real life 900, and there are also many great supporters who help tremendously like you.
אז אני רוצה להודות לשרה, מה? על זה שתרמת לנו את האולם הזה. תודה רבה. ותודה לך קובי, ותודה לך על ההשתתפות ועל באמת על התמיכה ולכל הנגנים המופלאים שהגנים לנו את זה.
I grew up in a musician's home. I listened since I was born. I had no choice.
And can you trace back the roots of feeling the obligation to be involved, to do things, not only music? Can you trace it back in your biography?
Well, I've learned from experience not to underestimate the power of music. We see that on every tour that we have made. You know, I am told that I've given more than 4,000 concerts with the Israel Philharmonic, but a lot of them were abroad. A lot of them were in places where, you know, Israel is not the favorite cup of tea all over the world. But we go to countries which are politically not in complete accord with us, and yet the orchestra enjoys standing ovations from people who come to the concert and through their interpretation convince at least the 2,000 people in that evening that there is way to get together and to live and to listen together. And you cannot underestimate that at all.
You mentioned the great ex-mayor of Tel Aviv, Chief Shlomo Lahad, and it reminded me of another great ex-mayor, Teddy Kollek, in Jerusalem. Recently you received an honor in his name, and I saw you speaking in this event in tears, remembering your old friend, and telling a story that I would humbly ask you to tell again about your meeting with Teddy Kollek in the 6 Days War in Jerusalem. You remember that?
Of course, yes. I went to Teddy's office. I think it was the 3rd or 4th day of the war. And Ben-Gurion was sitting there. And I knew Ben-Gurion quite well because he lectured to me sometimes when we were after concerts. He knew more about my religion than I did. He was really a scholar of Oriental religions. And we were speaking about what's going on in Jerusalem. And suddenly there was a messenger came that that the Wailing Wall was in Israeli hands. And Ben-Gurion stood up instinctively and said, "This we will never give up." And this was a moment, historical moment, I cannot forget. And Teddy, in his Viennese dialect that we spoke together, told me, he says, "Remember these words, remember what this man has just said." And yet, overnight, he became a mayor of 2 cities. And he was popular on both sides. And he convinced the mayor of Bethlehem that I would go with the orchestra and play the Requiem of Verdi at Bethlehem, at Manger Square.
A great work, but not too optimistic, I would say.
Well, we had the singers. Richard Tucker was there, some wonderful American singers too. And Teddy said, before I went on stage that evening, he said, "Listen, there's a new organization called Fatah that is against Israel, and they might do something this evening. So if you hear any shots, don't run away." He said, because you as a conductor, if you run, the whole public will panic. So I started conducting Verdi's Requiem, thinking that somebody is aiming at my head. But nothing happened. Nothing happened. And that mayor of Bethlehem became a good friend. And we went later, a year later, and played Mahler's Second Symphony. Gil Shacham played as a soloist, etc. So we did some things to bring people together. And they did come together on Manger Square in Bethlehem.
Maestro, I don't want to take too much of your time. I know that you have a full schedule tonight here in Tel Aviv, right?
Oh, this is every night.
What are you playing tonight? What are you conducting tonight?
Tonight is Beethoven's 6th Symphony and Dvorak's 7th Symphony. Yeah.
So if you have something else that you want to conclude with, and then I will allow 2 or 3 questions or remarks from this beautiful crowd.
But you know, you said there were 900 volunteers.
Yes.
That number will, I hope, increase also. Because you are only doing good. And when you do good, you will have support, for sure. And this country is used to giving support for good causes.